stations across the land, joepags.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, email. It's all right there. Also, Newsmax TV. It's the Joe Pags Show. Really glad to have you here, and super glad to have a guy on that I really wish would have won the presidency about 19 years ago now. It is the president and CEO, the editor-in-chief, he's the dude over at Forbes Media. It's Steve Forbes. Steve, how are you?
Good to be with you, Joe. Thank you.
We're really glad to have you back. The name of the PBS special that you're producing is In Money We Trust, and I want to get in earnest into what that is. But let's talk about some things that are happening currently. And again, we would have voted for you 20 years ago. I'm just going to put it out there, Steve Forbes. I think you know that.
Well, and I wish there'd been more like you in 2000. We'd be much better off today.
Well, the platform that you announced on my newscast in Lansing, Michigan, 19 years ago, revolved around a 17% tax rate. And people went, you can't do a flat tax of 17%. What are you talking about? Those evil rich people, have to pay 90%. It actually worked out in the wash to where a flat tax of 17% would have paid the note that we needed to pay every year to finance the government, and it would not have been unfair to anybody. Well, why do you think that was so roundly rejected?
It was roundly rejected because it would take away power from Washington.
Yeah.
When you have a complex tax code, everyone has to go there hat in hand.
Yeah.
That gives power to the politicians. Washington politicians love the thing. They denounce it, but they love it. And so the only way you're going to get a change is with we the people. And by the way, in the last 20 years or so, 25 years, 35 countries have adopted the flat tax.
Right.
And it's worked very well where it's been tried.
Well, how did we ever get the idea that we should tax people at a higher percentage, a progressive tax rate, the more successful you are? I thought in a capitalistic free enterprise society, we rewarded success.
That was once the credo, but it's certainly under attack today. And the idea was that if you make more, not only should you pay more, but you should pay at a higher rate. It's really, I think, a way in which you make government bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Because you get a 10% raise, your tax take to the government goes up 15%.
Crazy.
They're always one step ahead.
Yeah.
And then they force you to go into tax shelters and all those kinds of crazy things, or church the economy. But Washington would rather have more power over the economy than a more prosperous economy with less power.
Isn't that sick? And so very well said. It's Steve Forbes. He's the editor-in-chief and the chairman over at Forbes Media. And again, the name of the special on PBS that he's producing is called In Money We Trust. What's interesting to me about it is, as you know, the top 1% that the left continues to say isn't paying enough is paying 38 to 40% of all taxes. Think about that. 1% of all people in this country with income paying almost 40%. The top 10% is paying 70 or 80%. How is it that they still get away with this class warfare stuff when you and I know that the numbers say these people they're attacking are paying most of the note?
Because it's a very convenient narrative that the mainstream media doesn't call them out on.
Yeah.
Just to emphasize what you just said, when we had a 70% tax rate before Ronald Reagan took office, 70%, which is what these Democrats are calling for today.
Right.
The top 1% paid only 18% of federal income tax. At almost half the rate today, 37%, the top 1% pay almost 40%. So if you want to collect more from the rich, you have a more prosperous economy, simpler code, and a lower rate, and you get more revenue.
It only makes perfect sense. And by the way, the uber rich, when you overtax their income, they start spending the money instead of employing people, spending the money instead of research and development. I'm going to buy a house over in the Cayman Islands instead of maybe opening a new shop where I can employ 200 people. That really is the way it works. I mean, when you raise taxes to that point, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't that squelch the desire of people who employ us to go out and do more research and development, hire more people, expand their businesses?
And it hurts the very people who want to get ahead, as Lincoln put it, improve their lot in life.
Yeah.
We get ahead through investment. And when you destroy capital, people's savings, you get less prosperity in the future, not to mention the present. And by the way, you also touch on, by bringing that up about spending money about the death tax, what they call the inheritance tax.
Right.
If you go to Las Vegas for a weekend and binge on gambling and wine, women, and all that kind of thing,
yeah,
that's fine. But if you dare give that money to your children, you have to pay a tax.
It's nuts.
A gift tax.
And how is that not double? How is that not double taxation, Steve? I mean, that's all it is, right? It was taxed on the way in. Why are we taxing it again?
Yes, you should leave the world, I like to say, unmolested by the IRS. Or as our founders would say, no taxation without respiration.
Exactly right. It is Steve Forbes. He is the editor-in-chief and the chairman over at Forbes Media. He is producing a show, a special on PBS called In Money We Trust. Let's talk about NAFTA and the USMCA. NAFTA was a boondoggle. It was a real piece of garbage. We're seeing a $50 to $80 billion a year trade deficit with our friendly neighbor to the south, Mexico, because of this dumb deal that we made. Will the USMCA, in your opinion, fix that? Will we finally have a balanced trade with our good friends Canada and Mexico? Or is this just a fancy name for the same thing?
It has some improvements in it, and especially in the area of biological pharmaceuticals, that are going to help cure diseases in the future.
Right.
But the real challenge is going to be getting it through Congress.
Yeah.
They're going to want to play games with it. And I think the really thing to look out for in the next couple of months, I think we're going to see a humongous deal concluded with China, which is going to involve hundreds of billions of dollars in terms of trade. China needs our natural gas. I think you're going to see a major deal there.
Good.
They already buy from Russia and the Middle East, and they would love to have another supplier. So but again, will we get that through Congress? I think ultimately we will, just through the sheer force of public opinion, but it's going to be a real fight. But by golly, when we get those things done and cleared away and all these disputes are cleared away, you're going to see this economy really hum. And then the danger, Joe, is going to be the word that you can hear from the Fed, overheating. They believe the economy is like a machine, that we can get to be too prosperous, that prosperity causes inflation. No, bad Fed policy causes inflation.
Right.
And just think of it this way. When your income goes up, do you feel like you're getting too hot? Do you feel you're overheating?
No, Steve, I don't. I haven't felt that yet. Maybe I haven't been successful enough yet because I haven't felt the heat.
That's what the Fed thinks. Talks about overheating economy like we're a machine.
That's crazy.
Economies are individuals, not machines.
Yeah. It is Steve Forbes. He's the editor-in-chief and the CEO, or the chairman over at Forbes Media. He's got a new special on PBS called, and this, I want everyone to go make sure that you check this out, In Money We Trust. Also, you're the author of Money, How the Destruction of the Dollar Threatens the Global Economy and What We Can Do About It. What's interesting to me is that I tend to know a lot about a lot. I have to do a talk show and do all these hours of talk to great people like you, but I don't know anything, Steve. I told you this before the interview about the Federal Reserve. I don't know why it exists. I don't know why they can jockey with my 401k. I don't know why they can mess with the stock market when they feel like it and change interest rates whenever they feel like it. What is the need and the purpose of the Fed?
We go into this in the movie. The Fed was created to be what they call a lender of last resort.
Okay.
So when you get a banking panic, a sound bank can go in with the collateral and get a temporary loan to cover to make sure they don't get dragged down.
Right.
Which is fine. The Fed should have two basic jobs in addition to regulating banks, that kind of thing. Two basic jobs. One is to keep the dollar sound, and the other is to deal with those occasional panics, which can come up, a war or a disaster with the weather or something like that. It happens occasionally. So you deal with it. And that's all they should do. The idea that they should try to guide the economy is preposterous and destructive. And that's why that I emphasize that word overheat.
Yeah.
They have no business setting interest rates. As you know, interest is rent.
Right.
The rent you pay to the money you pay to rent the money from a lender.
Right.
And that should be set by lender and borrower. We know what rent control can do. Well, the same thing is true of the economy when you try to manipulate interest rates. The Fed can charge whatever rate it wants. If a bank wants to borrow from the Fed, that's fine. But trying to set the rates for the rest of the economy, it shouldn't do it. Leave it alone.
I'm going to ask you a dumm question, but for 20 years...
No, it isn't dumb.
For 20 years now... Well, for 20 years now, you've known how dumb I am. So here's the thing. I don't even know if it's part of the government. Is this a private entity? Is this a private bank? And if so, why can't we kick them to the curb and do something that's smarter? But if they are part of the government, are we funding and financing the ability of this organization to change my pension, to change the stock market, to change my interest
Well,
rate?
the crazy thing is the Fed almost makes it sound like they're a fourth branch of government.
Right.
The last I looked in the Constitution, they are not.
They're not.
They're created by Congress in 1913, and so Congress has oversight over the Federal Reserve. And it's high time they started to do it. And I hope
agree.
one of the things that this movie will do is have people ask, okay, we know what the original purpose of the Fed is. What should its role be today? Let's start a serious discussion.
It's almost like income taxes when they came in. They were never going to be higher than 1% or 3% or something stupid. And now you see our income taxes are through the roof. I mean, Ilhan Omar from Minnesota wants the top earners to pay 90%. She actually said that. So is this sort of the same thing? 100 years ago it made sense, but then it was a snowball that ran out of control with the Fed?
With the Fed, yes. Talk about mission creep. This was a mission tsunami controlling the economy.
Right.
And the best way to keep the dollar stable is through a gold standard. I know that's utterly unfashionable these days, but for 180 years we had one in this country, and we did just fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We haven't had the kind of growth since we went off than when we went on it. You have 60 minutes in an hour.
Right.
You have 12 inches in a foot. You have 16 ounces in a pound. That doesn't float each day.
Right.
Imagine if the Fed was in charge of the time bureau and you floated the clock.
That'd be crazy.
Say it's 60 minutes an hour one day, 80 minutes the next.
Right.
Imagine baking a cake. To bake the batter 30 minutes, you have to figure out those nominal minutes,
Right.
inflation-adjusted minutes, California minute, Mexican minute, New York minute.
Right.
It's preposterous.
It is.
So stability, fixed value of the dollar. That way we'll get prosperity. And it's not just the economy, it's social trust. We deal with strangers through money.
Right.
And when money is unstable, you get undeserved gains, undeserved losses. It undermines trust.
It is Steve Forbes. His PBS special is In Money We Trust. He's producing it. He is the chairman and also, of course, the editor-in-chief at Forbes Media. One last question. I've already taken too much of your time, Steve, but one last quick one. When it comes to quantitative easing, and I don't want to get into this in earnest because obviously that could take us 2 hours, but am I right when I say the $20 bill in my pocket is worth $20 today, but if you do quantitative easing and you print another million $20 bills, doesn't that in fact, de facto have to lessen the amount of money my 20 is worth? Doesn't it change the way? Because we print money without the gold standard, as you said. It makes what I already have worthless, doesn't it, or worth less?
Yes, it does over time, and you get periods. We've had one recently where the dollar shows a bit of strength, but the long-term trend has been decline.
Right.
97% since the Federal Reserve was created. That tells you all you need to know.
Right.
30% in the last 15, 20 years. So it's a slow downward drip. And it's not what our founders wanted, and it's not what we need. And if we want to have trust, we want to have a truly prosperous country. We don't have government running crazy on finances.
Right.
We need a dollar as good as gold.
I could not agree more. It's Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media. Also, he is the host of PBS's new special, In Money We Trust. Also, the author of Money, How the Destruction of the Dollar Threatens the Global Economy and What We Can Do About It. Steve, it's always an absolute pleasure. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Back after this in the Joe Pag Show. Stay right here.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing news channel, now in 65 million homes. Get Newsmax TV on all the major cable systems or go to NewsmaxTV.com and click on the Find Newsmax tab to locate us. Remember, Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.